I'm joined right now by one of the Democrats in Congress, Adam Schiff, a good friend of this broadcast, member of the Intelligence Committee. And Representative Schiff, your reaction to the president and the news that he was heading overseas, I dare say, despite being on the Intelligence Committee, you did not know, sir, that he was going?
That's correct, I didn't, but I'm certainly glad that he's there. I had the chance, Alex, to visit the troops there just 2 weeks ago, and it means an awful lot to have a chance to sit down with them, to break bread with them. I had one petty officer tell me that she has 3 young children, and her 5-year-old, before she was deployed, was so determined to keep her from leaving that he glued all of her shoes together. Very moving anecdotes that the troops have to share with us, and I'm sure with the president. And it's wonderful that he can be there and have a chance to thank them for their service to the country. Absolutely,
and we're glad to be able to provide some live pictures, which we're doing now. There you see Brad Paisley in the back. He is still performing, I'm sure much to the delight of all of those men and women in service to this country on this Memorial Day weekend. Sir, we did book you to talk about the Oversight Committee to which you've been appointed there. You're one of the 5 Democrats being appointed by Nancy Pelosi, the Oversight Committee, to look into the Benghazi incident. Do you think there are more questions to be answered? As a matter of fact, you said in a statement, if I'm not believed, following that appointment, that you don't think it is needed, so you have no questions at all about what happened that day?
Well, you know, I certainly had questions the first time we began an investigation, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be on the Intelligence Committee, to get to the bottom of things like this. But now, 8 investigations later, it's really hard to figure out what is left to uncover. And I don't really think that's the motivation anymore. Unfortunately, I think the motivation is simply to go after the administration, to try to embarrass the administration, potentially to go after someone who may be our next nominee. That's what's really driving this. It's a motivate the base kind of an operation. The Speaker, you might remember, Alex, was really resistant to doing this. The chair, the Republican chair of the Armed Services Committee, essentially said also, after you ask the questions over and over and over again and get the same answers, at a certain point you have to move on. But I think they felt compelled to do this for their base, and so, unfortunately, it's putting the Congress and the country through this extra taxpayer expense.
We've heard this past week Secretary Kerry is going to be testifying on Benghazi for the Oversight Committee, but he says that means he will not be testifying before your Select Committee. Any concerns about a turf war then being created between Republicans leading each investigation?
Well, there's certainly concern among the Republican leadership about exactly this. They don't have much control over Darrell Issa. They're not coordinating the various investigations. You have Issa releasing documents that are at odds with their sort of theory of the case, creating more. And now you have this situation where, in order to preempt this new Select Committee, Issa is subpoenaing Secretary Kerry. And naturally, the Secretary is saying, I'm happy to come in, but there's no reason for me to come in more than once, particularly since a lot of the same people are on that Government Oversight Committee. The Chairman Gowdy of the Select Committee is on the Oversight panel. So unless they just really want to harass the Secretary or grandstand, there really isn't any point in even bringing him in at all. After all, he was in the Senate at the time of Benghazi. But if they're going to do it, doing it more than once would be quite preposterous.
Yeah. Former CIA Acting Director Mike Morrell, who's been targeted by name in this issue, recently said that he welcomes the investigation because it might finally clear the air. Would that be a better approach for the White House, to act like they have nothing to hide, so effectively just bring it on?
Well, you know, I think that's been their position for the first several iterations of this investigation. I wish I could agree with Mr. Morrell, and I think he's a very dedicated public servant, but that presupposes there really is a desire to get to the bottom of this, or there is air yet to be cleared. And the fact of the matter is, we've been over and over again these talking points. I was hoping that the Select Committee wouldn't become a Select Committee on talking points, but it may be doing just that. You know, I'm afraid that's probably not where this is headed. And I think it's very interesting that the Republicans have decided to make Mike Morrell the target here, rather than General Petraeus, who was the head of the CIA at the time, and essentially gave us the same briefing as Mike Morrell. I think they're picking and choosing their targets. Maybe they don't want to go after someone of General Petraeus' stature, but it certainly isn't very consistent, given that we got the same information from both.
Yeah. All right. I want to switch gears here and talk about the NSA bill that the House passed on Thursday, which has generally been considered a gutted bill, particularly because it makes no changes to the FISA court. Is it purely symbolic?
No, I don't think it is at all, and I wouldn't describe it as a gutted bill. It ends the metadata program. That's a very significant step. It goes to a model that I've been advocating for quite some time, where we let the telecommunications companies hold on to their own data. It requires the government to go to the court first to get approval before it can request that data from the telecommunications providers. Those are very substantial reforms. Now, there are other things that I've been pushing for that I was not able to get in the bill and that others would like to see too, and I would put at the very top of that list a privacy advocate, an independent process, an adversarial process in the FISA court. We don't have that yet, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get it. I would urge the Senate to try to include it, but even if it's not a part of this bill is not going to be the end-all of FISA reform. We're going to keep at this, and I know there are going to be other improvements we're going to make as well.
I want to ask you about the laudatory statement that you issued after the passage of the bill, which would not have happened were it not for Edward Snowden coming forward. So has he had a positive impact on this country?
Well, my statement, of course, made no mention of Snowden, and I wouldn't use the word laudatory in his connection. Yes, I think that it's true that he sparked a very important public debate, and that public debate has led to reform. But that public debate could have begun in other ways, and there were many of us that were pushing for reform even in the absence and prior to Mr. Snowden. So I'd be loath to give him credit given the damage that he's done. But it is true that he sparked a debate that has ultimately resulted in this reform.
All right, deftly answering that question, which I have no surprise that you're able to do. Thank you very much, Representative Adam Schiff. I appreciate your insights as always, sir. Want to let all of you know